Hello, everybody. It's Dan McTeague, President Canadians for Affordable Energy. Well, guess what? We're coming up to not just an Easter long weekend, we're actually coming up to that time of the year where most of us have sort of ignored in the past, but can no longer ignore April Fool's Day. And you have to wonder who on April 1st feels more like a fool, or if they in fact feel like they've been robbed a few dollars. Because again, the federal Liberal NDP coalition in Ottawa is going to be imposing yet another increase in your carbon tax. And what does that really mean? A lot of people try to dismiss this, especially apologists who tend to be grifters. They tend to be folks that receive money from the government to advocate for the hardship of this cost. But let's put this in perspective. It's an increase from 14.31 cents a liter to 17.61 cents a liter. So except for Quebec, which has its own particular cap and trade policy, it means that right across the country from coast to coast, you'll be seeing a net increase, not just of 3.3 cents, but you may see, depending on the region of the country you find yourself in, if it's GST, you'll be moving up to about 3.5 cents a liter. If you happen to be in my province of Ontario, it'll be more like 3.72 cents a liter. And if you are in the Maritimes where it is 15% HST, then you're looking at about 3.8 to 3.85 cents a liter. What that really means is, for some people, not a big deal. If you're using 50 or 60 liters a week, that may only work out to $1.50 or $2. But then we have to look at this long term, what it happens over the year. Well, that's now $200. And in fact, when you think about it, it's piled on to the other taxes. So that means you're now paying 20 cents on every liter of gasoline. That is, in fact, inflationary, arbitrary, and completely unnecessary. Let me unpackage that. The Minister of Environment, who has been promoting this, breaking his own pledge, the pledge of the Liberal government in 2019, saying we'll go beyond the $50 a ton, which at that time was about 11 cents a liter. We're going to take it to $170 a ton. It's still amusing, by the way, that they go even higher than that. But that means that what the government has proposed is something that's highly inflationary. It's amazing that the Canadian bank, the chief of Tiff Macklin has not said anything about this. But when you take energy and you artificially inflate it by 10 to 12%, which the carbon tax is doing at this stage, then you have to ask yourself, how in goodness name are they ever going to achieve their 2% inflation ceiling target? They're not, because energy will continue to rise at a much faster rate, regardless of what the market does. And we're now dealing with a market that is starting to show real signs of supply stress, that is a supply deficit, and strong demand in the countries that count, like China and the United States. So what this all means is that on April 1st, not only will you be given an unwelcome gift of an increase in prices, we now know very clearly from the Parliamentary Budget Officer, not from the Liberal talking points of the Liberal War Room or the NDP friends. We know from the Independent Parliamentary Budget Officer that you will experience net deficits in terms of your ability to make ends meet. That means that the Canadian rebate, the carbon rebate that the government is now trying to muster some support for, falls well short of what it's going to cost you. Not only is it going to cost you in terms of gasoline prices, but it's also going to cost you in terms of the cascading effect, the rippling effect of what those taxes mean for other products. And here, of course, we can't just talk about gasoline. We have to talk about diesel, which will go from 17.38 cents a liter to 21.39 cents a liter. So a net increase of 4 cents plus GST or HST. That means that by the end of the day, diesel prices will have a tax on them of about 23 cents a liter, based on an average in this country of about $1.70 a liter. That's about 13 to 14%. Again, a tax that cascades, that makes its way through the economy as it's applied to drivers, to transport. And it doesn't just stop with trucks. It also means our rail system. It means our jets, which run on diesel. And yes, it eventually makes its way back to home heating fuel. Now, not to make matters too complicated, because you hear a lot of people talking about this now. It's a big deal to talk about, axe the tax. But we tend to forget that 3 or 4 years ago, no one said anything about this. It was no big deal. It's only 4 cents a liter. No big deal. It's 8 cents a liter. Big deal. It's only 12 cents a liter. We now know that this is having a pernicious and damaging effect on the economy and the bottom line of every Canadian. We also have to be mindful that in 2 regions of the country, we have a second carbon tax, the Clean Fuel Regulation, the Clean Fuel Standard. That's the one we at Canadians for Affordable Energy took some time to work with LFX and Associates, Ross McKittrick as an economist, to ensure that people understood the full damaging impact of a second carbon tax. That's going to wind up costing you and I an additional 20 cents a litre on top of the carbon taxes. That is the first carbon tax the federal Liberals and their friends in the NDP are proposing, implementing, and now we're seeing that begin. By the time it's all said and done, as we know, in 2030, not only will you pay an extra 20 cents a litre for diesel and gasoline for the second carbon tax as refiners pass that cost on, for Ontario, Manitoba, Saskatchewan, Alberta, you're now going to see a scenario, and of course, Quebec, which gets no carbon tax increase except for its cap and trade, which tends to go up on its own schedule. They're going to face this as well. So Quebec will not be left out of this. But when we come down to it, it looks like about a 42-cent hit for the first carbon tax for gasoline and 20 cents for the second. So 60 to 65 cents a litre is what you'll be paying just to move from point A to point B. And because electric vehicles are damaging to the environment, because they are very difficult to make, not without children from the Democratic Republic of Congo providing you the cobalt you need to make these things work, and the fact that there very well may need to be a major price reduction as a result of China bringing its much cheaper vehicles into North America and to Europe. We are not only staring at an impossible burden on consumers, we're also looking at the prospect that the $60 billion that your federal government has committed of your money borrowed may very well be wasted before these plants, these battery plants, Northvolt, Stellantis, and of course, Volkswagen are in fact built. All of these things should be very troubling to ordinary, normal, reasonable Canadians, but they're not, and they are lost deliberately on the hucksters in Ottawa, part of them my old party, the Liberal Party, and the NDP, who continue to resist the call by most Canadians to stop this madness. I will talk a little further down the road about the need for us to look and expand our horizons beyond simply one carbon tax and to look fundamentally at the juggernaut behind all of this, the net zero program. We need to nix net zero. I will continue to hashtag that where I can. But in the meantime, I encourage you to understand full well that it's important you tell your members of parliament who know that these carbon taxes will not reduce carbon. We know that Stephen Guilbeault, the Minister of Environment, has said, yeah, it'll happen in 2060. Look, I don't know if I'll be around, but I can tell you his party and the damaging effect it's having on Canadians will definitely not be around to see that day. For your help and for the help we're providing for you here today, we'd ask that you visit our YouTube channel, Canadians for Affordable Energy. And if you're so inclined, please help and donate and watch what we have to say on Canadians for Affordable Energy. AffordableEnergy.ca is our website. We'd love to hear more from you and a lot of feedback. It always helps us help you make the way ahead to make life a little bit more affordable by ensuring that our energy services are indeed not only for most of us affordable, but they also provide us a modicum of living, the likes of which most countries would envy. That's it for me today. Thanks for watching. Dan McTeague.